focused on local and regional and national governments conducting inclusive subnational reviews of SDG implementation, including reporting and identifying main messages and challenges and opportunities. This is something in which you have all been engaged in the last couple of years, and the focus of today's day one of the workshop is to take part in a sharing of experiences and peer learning. From each country, we're going to hear from national governments. From South Africa and Mozambique, we will hear from local government associations, and we will hear from local governments, of course, from Zimbabwe, from rural district councils and city governments, from South Africa, from metropolitan and local municipalities and cities, and from Mozambique. In addition to the national experience, we will hear the experiences of subnational governments at 3 different levels: provincial, district, and municipal. From DESA, we sincerely commend the work that you have been carrying out. By preparing your VLRs or actively working to prepare them, you are not only contributing to the development of your own communities, the inclusive development, but you have also really joined a global movement of both national and local governments that are really focused on localizing the SDGs. As was mentioned in the opening, we estimate that more than 300 VLRs have been prepared to date, and some of these have been prepared by representatives who are in the room today. And the VLRs demonstrate numerous good practices and, I would say, continuous innovation. For example, we are witnessing growing collaboration between national and local governments on VLR preparation. National governments are increasingly championing the VLR process. From DESA, we continue to see a very strong demand from member states that ask for capacity building support focused on the VLRs. And we see examples of national governments seeking to scale up the VLR practice. And I think that we will be hearing a really interesting example, very strong example today from Zimbabwe, which has rolled out a countrywide practice. We also observe strong intergovernmental collaboration at the subnational level. I believe that the Mozambican delegation will share valuable insights into how the national, but also provincial, district, and municipal levels of government are working between and amongst themselves to advance sustainable development within their country. And we also see a strong willingness of local governments to participate in capacity building for others, including others from different countries. For example, we very much appreciated the participation of local governments from South Africa in a training workshop for Eswatini that we carried out with the government there in October of last year. While large cities often lead the way, a growing number of smaller local governments, including those in rural areas, such as here in Zimbabwe and in Mozambique we will hear about, are now actively engaging in the VLR practice. And we're also witnessing examples of very strong stakeholder participation. For example, the South African delegation will share insights into a children's report, a review of SDG implementation from the perspective of children and young people, which serves as a valuable complement to the national VNR. So the value of VLRs is undeniable. However, as stated this morning, they're not merely an end in themselves, but rather a crucial starting point for further SDG localization. And indeed, a second objective of the project that we have been implementing has been to enhance the capacity of local and regional governments to integrate the SDGs into local development plans and strategies. So days 2 and 3 of the workshop will therefore focus on other actions that can be taken to advance SDG localization. These can be implemented post-VLR, concurrently with the VLR process, or independently of it. So the sessions will delve into leaving no one behind and the participation of civil society and other stakeholders in SDG localization efforts, including the SDGs in local development planning, accelerating implementation of the 2030 agenda at local level through a focus on the transitions, which we heard a bit about this morning, the 6 transitions. These are areas for action that have been identified that are seen as entry points to achieve strongest outcomes for multiple goals while reducing trade-offs between goals that you may be trying to achieve. We will have a session focusing on financing for sustainable development at local level, and one on the application of the principle of subsidiarity for sustainable development, and on partnerships to advance implementation of the goals. And we'll also hear both an international perspective and views from the UN system in each of your 3 countries regarding the work of the UN system to support multi-level approaches to advancing SDG local, implementation at local and national levels. So with that, I think I would just like to share a few housekeeping notes. The first is to let you know that DESA has prepared a web page for this event, and we will be sharing the URL with you. For the moment, it just includes the concept note and the program, but as you all make your presentations, those of you who have prepared something in writing that you share with us, which is you don't need to do, but if you've done it, we will post those on our website, so they'll be available to everybody as a valuable resource after the workshop. If you can please send them to me and to Simeon in advance. It's also important that we share them with our interpreters to facilitate their work. Speaking of which, as was mentioned this morning, we have English-Portuguese interpretation. So participants, please feel comfortable speaking in either English or Portuguese, and everybody has a headset on the table in front of them that they may make use of. Starting tomorrow, we will have a number of virtual presenters in the workshop. We have a Zoom link, but today we are having a technical issue with the Zoom link, so we have sent out instead a Teams invitation. So we do have a number of participants or interested stakeholders following us online right now through the through this connection, and we'll give an update later about which connection we will use for tomorrow. And then finally, as you're all about to see, there has been one late change in the program, which is that South Africa is now going to present now, and Zimbabwe will present directly after lunch, and then Mozambique will present after Zimbabwe, which is as it was planned. So thank you very much, and we're very much looking forward to hearing your national presentations today, national and local. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pollock, for the overview and what we expect in the next, this is already day number 1, so in the next the other 2 days. And I think everyone is now in sync on what is going to happen. So with that change, we invite the head for South Africa, who is going to chair this session, and then we start the presentation for South Africa. I don't know exactly who is chairing. Oh, thank you, ma'am, for volunteering. Clap hands for her until she reaches the podium.
Good morning. My name is Silondile Mpontjane from the National Planning Commission in South Africa. Thank you to Zimbabwe for the invite. We feel very welcome. So session 3 will be focusing on the challenges, opportunities, and lessons learned in the participation of the VLRs. So there'll be an experience of South Africa. And I'd like to highlight that since UNDESA has collaborated with South Africa, the NPC, South African Local Government Association, the United Nations Residents Coordination Office, and the United Nations Development Program in South Africa, with assistance from the Government of Italy, organized the first capacity workshop on VLRs in South Africa in March 2023. So that journey started the year 2023, and that experience will be explained further. So from our experience in South Africa, there has been 9 VLRs that were presented for the first time. and we have one municipality that has presented for the second time as well. So for these VLRs, they seek to strengthen policies and institutions of local governments and to mobilize multi-stakeholder support and engagement for accelerating the implementation of the SDGs at the local level. So this session will provide an opportunity to share experiences of the subnational implementation and SDG localization through the preparation of the VLRs. In the meantime, I would like to call upon the three of our guests who will be presenting. Ms. Xoliswa Dilata from the National Planning Commission, Mr. Tebogo Matlo from the South African Local Government Association, and also Ms. Ritabile Mbogodi from the UN Global Compact. And then later I will call the local government after they've presented. Thank you. You can take a seat. We'll see you start.
Good morning. I wasn't ready to present now, but I'll try. So if I seem nervous, please understand. My name is Xoliswa Dilata. I am from the National Planning Commission. As a way of background on what the National Planning Commission is, the National Planning Commission is for lack of a better English word, is a group of commissioners. So the South African government, it was in 2008, appointed experts from government and academia to come together to form the Planning Commission. So the commission is made up of a group of experts from different fields who in 2012 produced what we called the National Development Plan, Vision 2030, which was South Africa's long-term plan and development guide and roadmap to the development of South Africa's economy and society. So the main aim of the NDP was to is to eliminate poverty and reduce inequality by 2030. So as we all know that the SDGs were adopted in 2015 as a global call to action to end poverty, inequality, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy a health, justice, and prosperity. What we then did as South Africa, we then produced a report that was looking at the alignment of the National Development Plan with the SDGs. What we then found from that report that we produced was that the NDP was close related to the SDGs. For example, I'll just make an example of a few chapters that are on the NDP. For example, we have chapter 8, chapter 11, which looks at social protection. If you then compare it or align it to the SDGs, it would align to goal 1 on ending poverty and goal 3 on ensuring healthy lives and promoting the well-being of all people. We have chapter 10, which talks about promoting health. When we align it to the SDG, it aligns to goal 2 and goal 3 of the SDGs. So that this is just to give an example to then say, as South Africa, our long-term plan is also closely aligned to the SDGs. In our process of domesticating the SDGs, what we then thought as South Africa was that there are 4 elements that are important for us in the process of localization and implementing the domestication of SDGs, the first element is alignment. We encourage we encourage stakeholders to align their existing objectives and missions with the NDP, with Agenda 2063 and SDG frameworks. So what we are saying here is that as South Africa, we are promoting that local government, the private sector, the academia, as they plan, they make sure that they are aligned to these frameworks, not only to the NDP, but also to Agenda 2063 and to also the SDG frameworks. The second important element for us is collaboration. This was also evident in the VNR that we produced in 2024, where we made sure that the VNR is not only a reflection of government's view of how, as a nation, we are implementing the SDGs, but we brought in together academia, the private sector, civil society, local government. So we had a collaborative process with all these stakeholders to ensure that their voice and their opinion is reflected in the national review. The third element is advocacy. We have established a series of public awareness campaigns and tools to ensure that South Africans know what SDGs are, the importance of implementing SDGs, but not only implementing, but reporting and tracking the implementation of the SDGs. The last element is reporting. We are in a process of developing a reporting framework which is meant or which aims to track the implementation of the goals, the target, and the means of implementation, and how we have collaborated with our partners. So that was the background for us, South Africa, in terms of where we got to where we are now in the domestication of SDGs. In 2024, as I've already mentioned, South Africa was then drafting or preparing to present its second national VNR. We then thought, let us also start a process of developing local reviews. Fortunately, SALGA was there and UNDESA was there to offer us the technical support that we needed in terms of, one, identifying the municipalities that will volunteer. I just want to make it out there that the municipalities that will be presenting their local reviews, they volunteered themselves, not knowing what they are about to do without any experience. But UNDESA was there in 2023 to give us our first workshop and capacity building workshop, where then the municipalities made the commitment to say they will start doing their first local reviews. I am proud to say that we had 9 reviews that came out of that process, and the reports, the information from the reports were then added into the VNR and into the key messages that went on to be, well, it hasn't been presented, will be presented this year at the HLPF. So let me just give a highlight to say, from the process of the collaboration, some of the key messages that were identified from the local reviews that were then used in the VNR includes the need to prioritize human well-being and enhance capabilities through sustainable development. So what we did with the key messages is that we also grouped the targets. For example, this the first mechanism, it involves SDG 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 11. It is basically meant to focus on improving the quality of life and enhancing the capabilities of all South Africans. We then thought the second important thing for South Africa to look at is to invest in young people for partnership in fields with high job growth potential, such as the green and digital economies. And to achieve that, we thought it is important to ensure that SDG 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, and 15 are implemented. The third one, it was on creating economic growth and opportunities by increasing sustainable energy sources. The fourth important message from our collaboration was to unblock infrastructure constraints and invest in green economy, and to invest in green and resilient infrastructure. This focuses on SDG 8, 9, 10, and 11. We then said that we think as South Africa it is important to invest in a network industries and target key infrastructure investments that will support diversity and a competitive economy. The fifth key message for us was on rebuilding trust through effective and responsive institutions, which is SDG 16 and 17. So for South Africa, we then said it is important to rebuild public trust by effectively combating corruption and increasing the efficiency in the public service. The last one was mobilize means for implementation, which is SDG 17. We thought that it is important to optimize resource mobilization, such as tax collection, reduce illicit financial flows, call for appropriate technology transfer, and expand the technical and financial cooperation, which is important in accelerating South Africa's progress towards achieving the SDGs. I will not go into what the findings of the VLRs are. I think the municipalities were going to do that for us. But I think for us as the Planning Commission and as a coordinator of the SDGs for the national government, the process for us was very enlightening. It was very educative. I think where we found the most challenges was in the area of collecting and accessing data, and also in the area of financing the SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dilata. As you've highlighted, the NDP of South Africa's long plan, aiming on the triple threats, triple challenges, and also highlighting on the SDG alignment, of which I'd like to highlight that South Africa is aligned, is 74% aligned to the SDGs, which I think they're doing really well. So being that said, I would like to welcome Ms. Retabile Mbokodi, who will be presenting on behalf of the UN Global Compact. Thank you.
Can I have a mover? Presentation. Okay. Is it on now? Okay, so I have a pleasure of representing the UN Global Compact Network South Africa. My name is Retabile Mbokodi, and we were tasked by DPME, by an MPC to do this report again, in 2024. We started the process in 2023. So my presentation will show as follows. The first part is just really introducing who we are as a UN Global Compact, because not everybody knows who we are here. And now moving into the methodology, what we did as a compact to get the data from the private sector. Then we'll deep dive a little bit, not too much, into the results, because we are so proud of our report, just to talk a little bit about the report, and then deep dive into the process, what the challenges, the gaps were in our process of collecting the data and putting this report together. So who are we as a UN Global Compact? Can move on to the next slide, please. Not that one. We were founded in 1999. The previous one, please. I don't have a mouse. Apologies. I'll keep on saying this. Say, please move, please go back. We were founded in 1999 by Kofi Annan, who we all know, I'm sure, who was the UN General Secretary back then. He was talking at Davos, at this meeting, the annual meeting that goes on at Davos, the World Economic Forum, saying we as companies, let's come together as CEOs of companies to come to have a compact that can build a human face to the global market. He spoke to about 40 CEOs back then. Then in 2000, UN Global Compact was born to say, this is how UN Global Compact, the purpose of it is to make sure that companies are doing business in a principled manner, implementing back then, I think, the MDGs and now the SDGs. As you can see in the next slide, we help companies, next slide, please, sorry. Next slide, please. We help companies, private sector companies, to have a principled approach to implementing the SDGs. The principles we base on, we say they must focus on are those ones on the left there. There are 10 in number, but they're categorized into 4, as you can see there: human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption. And we say you find opportunities, making the principles your foundation. You found the principles, we found the opportunities, and take care of the matters that the issues of the world that need to be solved through the SDGs. So when a CEO signs to the compact, they say we'll abide by the principles of the UN, we'll abide by the SDGs, and we are there to help them in that. You can go on to the next slide, please. We are over 20,000 plus companies in the world, currently in more than 160 countries worldwide, and 70 plus country network, including South Africa. And at the moment, South Africa, we are sitting with members, around 1,000 members in the country, and we are trying to get more and more companies to say, you as business, you can do more. You as business have a responsibility of implementing the SDGs. At the foundation, they are our principles. You can go ahead, please. Our VR Jenny, you can go ahead. The next slide, please. We contributed to the South Africa VNR, Voluntary National Review, by saying this is what private sector is saying on the SDGs. This is how they are doing. In the next slide, please. We were tasked, like I said, by the DPME, the National Planning Committee. We're doing the VNR for private sector for the second time. We did it in 2019. This is our second time representing private sector South Africa. And our report this time around was part of the addendum of the national report of South Africa. So that was a big deal for us. And also, we represented private sector South Africa by being in the writing team for the VNR, for the South Africa VNR, which was a big plus for us. Why? Because the private sector stories and impact stories could be featured in the report itself. So we were able to influence, saying, yes, there are issues in South Africa. Yes, private sector can do more, but this is what they are doing. These are the challenges. So that was a big one for us. And we are hopeful that it will be submitted in 2025, like my colleagues have said earlier on, to the High Politicum Forum. Yeah, High Politicum, yeah, Forum, yeah. Okay, you can go ahead, please. Next slide. This is a methodology really on a page of what we did as a UN Global Compact representing private sector South Africa. We had around 16 stakeholder engagement, visual roundtables. Why visual? It was important that we are inclusive in our process. We couldn't just do it in Gauteng because that was going to restrict others from joining. We had 16 roundtables. Some of those roundtables were deep dives into sector, saying how are you doing as a sector on the SDGs? What are your challenges? We had companies participating. 132 companies participating in the process, and those are the stats that show just really, I'm not going to read them all. And we had around 30 case studies of saying this is how we are doing this is how our challenges are, this is our opportunities. And most importantly, we had collaboration with strategic partners. Why? That was very, very important. You'll see in our reflection of the process. That was very important. Why? Because we partnered with BUSA. BUSA, I think it's called, what we call it in South Africa, Business Unity South Africa, which is a main body for business. We partnered with BLSA, Business Leadership South Africa, to say, come on board, BLSA leadership, BUSA leadership, so that you can advocate for SDGs, advocate for this process and why it's important for us. We partnered with Mineral Council South Africa for mining companies to come on board. I'm mentioning this specifically because collaboration is key in doing the VNRs and doing the VLFs, so that VLRs is very, very important. That helped us a lot in our process also, that collaboration. Okay, you can go to the next slides, please. This is really showing it again in a picture format, what we needed from each individual company that participated. And very important, this wasn't not just getting information from our member companies, as we call them, participant companies. It was open to the whole of South Africa, private sector South Africa, and say, private sector South Africa, please come on board. We need to know how you're doing with the SDGs. So this is, I want to say in detail there what we said. You can have this presentation and look at it later. Okay, like I said earlier on, it was important to get data from the industries. As we know, SDG implementation is very different per industry. So it was very important to say, this is how industry mining is doing, this is how financial is doing. So we tell that story, not only from a collective private sector South Africa, but saying how industries are doing. And going forward, now that we have the final report, we're going to go into sector deep dives, saying this is what the report said. What are you saying as each sector? Because that's what South Africa, corporate South Africa needs at the moment to say. They need to know how they can work together collaboratively as industries. You can go ahead, please. Okay, so this was the main VNR objective. Objective was the VNR process was to enable the connection. Companies wanted to connect, to say it and learn from each other. To communicate their progress. So they appreciated so much of those visual roundtables so that they can share. Others were able to lead. We allow them to lead, and so they can show other companies to say, this is how we are doing it to progress the SDGs. So there was that peer learning among companies, which companies appreciated a lot. Okay, SDG priorities. Going into the SDG priorities, I'm not going to deep dive into this. You'll have the presentation, but it shows, the next slide, please. It shows how overall SDG priorities in South Africa, you can go to the next one. I think the next one shows it better. I hope you can see. So like I said, we did our report, the first report there on the left on the 2019. We did our first report and we did the second one in 2024. But it shows a shift in SDG priorities in private sector. As you can see there, I think number one is there. What is number one there? I can't even remember now. It's a private sector contributing to the well-being and growth, I think. It says so, right? SDG 8 and then SDG 13. As you can see, there's a shift, major shift between 2019 and 2024. And we are saying the rationale, the likely rationale for the shift in the SDGs was rising awareness in policy relating to climate action. If you remember the period between 2019 and 2024, a lot of things happened regarding climate action, both locally, regionally, and also from a global perspective. Economic hard times, volatile trading environment, and the pandemic also. Hence, you see the rise in the SDG 4 rising very high there because of the COVID-19 pandemic, negative financial impact of load shedding, and impact on communities, etc. So these are the shifts that's showing how the private sector SDGs shifted from 2019 and 2024. Going to the next, please. Next slide, please. Talking to the mic. Okay, sorry, talking to the mic. Okay, as I said earlier on, we had industry deep dives into the SDGs. This is really a map showing you what each industry in South Africa was prioritizing, is prioritizing. The narrative can change as things change, but it's just really showing you how each industry prioritize the SDGs. The slide I was showing earlier on was just really showing the overall picture of private sector South Africa. Okay, go the next one, please. What was different with the 2024 report was the policy enablement. We didn't have this in 2019. So private sector said, this is how we see that policy or regulation can be improved on. This is how what we can do as private sector South Africa. This is what government can do to improve policy, to enable us to create value for South Africa. So in the next slide there, we see 5 areas that were identified by private sector South Africa. These are the asks to government. And we had a pleasure of presenting this to the Minister of Department of what? Planning, monitoring, and evaluation. We had the pleasure of presenting this to her, and she said she was going to invite us to cabinet so we can present it to the ministers and say, this is what private sector South Africa is saying. So in a nutshell, saying 5 asks from government, they're saying make it simple to adopt so that it's simple. You can look at it and say, this is simple, it's not complex. One-stop shop online portal, they're saying as much as possible, let's try and digitize so that we are not running from one department going to the next one. Things must be in one place. That will make life a bit easier for private sector South Africa. The previous slide, please. And number 3, make it consistent. There shouldn't be deviations between what local is asking, what provincial is asking, what national is asking. And also, check it's working. Check it's working. Ask for feedback from different companies. Say, is it working? And tell the people, say, this is how it's not working. This is where you can come in to make it work. And lastly, focus on incentives. For example, more tax rebate incentives and more financing incentives, etc. So the list goes on. So this was a big one for us for 2024 report to say, we have a policy ask to government to say, this is how it can be improved. Okay, so I think the next slide is now deep diving into the process of the VNR. I had to share that because we thought the report was so great. I had to say a little bit about it. So the process itself, the methodology, upon reflection, we see that our successes were as follows in the process. I can't see from here properly. Increased private sector engagement. We had more companies joining in, especially the SMEs. They came along. Why? Because we spoke to the bigger companies and say, bring along your value chain. It's very important for SMEs to be part of this. It's not only for big corporates who know and have the resources. So that was very good. And collaboration and multi-stakeholder partnerships, I've spoken at length about that. That was very key. It's very key for making the VNR successful. And the strategic partners, I've spoken about that and how they helped us in the process. And well-coordinated invitation process. We are saying, this is invite, we send it here, and how it flows through the value chain. So it was very well done from that perspective. And also well-designed insight collection and design and process. And policy and advocacy influence that I spoke about, it was a success for us that we are able to get to that stage where we are able to say, this is what private sector South Africa is asking for. And also the showcasing, our report showcases a number of impact stories of success and challenges in the report. As an appendix, it shows how companies are doing and with regards to their different SDGs, and also capacity and awareness. The process played a part in uplifting and upskilling private sector South Africa to know how they are doing, to know how to collaborate together, and to say this is where we can collaborate together. Our challenges, like I said earlier on, through my colleague here, she says data collection. Data collection was also an issue, and reporting inconsistencies. Companies report through various matrices. Nothing is standardized. They find it very tedious. Us coming also and saying, we need VNR data. It was a nightmare to get that data from them. It was not easy at all for us. And validation of company data. Sometimes they had to validate, which is very important for us, but it took long to validate. Some of the company data was not validated. So it took longer to get it validated. Lack of what? Specific integrated KPIs and metrics. Metrics came from different sources, so it was very difficult to bring everything together. The next slide show challenges are many, as you can see. Consistency of private sector data metrics, I've spoken about that. Promoting VNR concept to get engagement. It was a challenge in the beginning. Hence, we found that collaborating with the strategic partners was very important so that they can sell it to their people and say, this is why you're supposed to be part of this journey. And also the company lack of awareness of the SDGs and 2030. Some companies were not aware. We may think that everybody should be knowing about it, but some companies were not even aware, saying, what are these SDGs? What are we supposed to do? Especially the small ones, the SMMEs. So we see that as part of our role as a global compact to say, how do you educate? How do you allow for those peer learning sessions? And also there again, number 8, I can't see what I've written there. Benefits of the VNR. We had to say, this is the business case for it. This is why it matters to you to be part of telling the story. You don't have to be a big corporate only. The small guy yourself, you are allowed to be part of this process. So that was very critical there. Challenges of ensuring full completion of the process. For example, there, just to name a few, we had challenges such as obstacles regarding internal reviews. They took forever. Disruption caused by changes in key personnel. For example, we had one person change in company, so we didn't know who to follow up with. So that became a challenge for us. And also, and tendency to prioritize. Please go back. Please go forward. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Okay. So go back, please. I'm finalizing that one, please. So challenges also, difficulties in obtaining critical insight, endorsement from senior leadership. It was not easy all the time to get that, but we finally got them. And also internal communication. So saying, what is this VNR? We have so much going on already. We don't have to be doing this. And lessons learned. The next slide, I think, it shows the lessons learned, what we learned. That will be my final slide. Early stakeholder engagement is key. Telling the people, even before you start the process, it's very important to say, this is what's going to be happening. This is the business case for the VNR. This is how you come on board. These are the opportunities for you to come on board. Collaboration, as I spoke again, collaboration is key. I think that's my main message. Collaboration across with civil society, collaboration with strategic partners, very, very key to get the message out there. Clarity is very important also to have a methodology, saying this is a methodology we'll be following. This is how we're going to get the outputs, and this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to simplify it for people who are giving us the data, for them to understand what we are needing, and also having a dedicated resource, gathering and analyzing existing private sector data. So we had somebody doing that for us, saying to look and say, how is private sector doing? Because not all the information the companies could submit. They didn't have time sometimes. So we had to do that research, background research, to see how companies are doing. And also to encourage participating companies to refer other companies. As I said, we had a larger number this time around of SMEs. So that was very important to bring along the value chain, to say SMEs come along also. And also lessons learned, continuous tracking and data improvement. I think we've spoken a lot about this. Data is very key. We are trying to establish a data center for ourselves as a global compact, so companies can be able to look at for information, or also put that information there. So data, very key for the VNR itself. I think that was my last slide. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mbogodi. That was very insightful, hearing from private sector side that this is the second report and how business has contributed to the VNR, and also being part of the writing team has been very successful through the process of the VNR. And how it was interesting to see how the stakeholder engagement that you went through, not just with government, but also within the business sector, where you extended your support and the engagement participation across business sector to make contributions within the national report. And most importantly, I was taken by the policy enablement, of which I think everyone should consider. Make it simple, one-stop shop, make it consistent, check if it's working, and lastly, more focus on incentives. I think that's those 5 elements are very important for everyone. Thank you so much, Ms. Mbogodi, and thank you. I'd like to call on upon Mr. Tebogo Matlo. Thank you. Okay.
Program director, thank you very much. And I did. It's not coming. Okay. There's a technical error. It's SDG number 9 on innovation. So I'm gonna save it there, but I can talk to it. But you want people to see a TV? Okay. He says you must see. Yeah, but let me do it. I can see people are still on their phones using technology. You are free to take a picture as part of the SDG number 9. We use technology. However, there were key messages. I'll start with the country on SDG number 11 because it's very key. Through your program director, let me greet again because I'm coming for the second time. Good day. All the protocol observed because I'll take time to greet all of you. So the key message, Mr. Sibanda and the executive from UN, we really thank you for. Am I clear? Or should I use that one? You can hear me? Okay. Yeah, let me put it close. Yeah, there is a TV. So the first one is where South Africa did a report on a VNR on the faces that South Africa to service provision, and the key one is that we all live in local government, isn't it? We are in Victoria Falls because we are under the district here, Victoria Falls. We landed there, we came here, we use local government services. So it shows that the importance of SDG number 11, local government, is very key. Because everything, all the SDGs are happening in local government. They're not happening in the space. So we put, it's not moving. Mine, I'm already on page 5. So the key one is the air pollution is happening there. Yeah, no, go back. I was just, go back there. I'm still on that page. Yeah, no, the other one. Go back again. Again. Back again. No, you're going forward. You're not going back. No, don't go to pages. Go to page 2. Yeah, this one. You see, there's high levels of air pollution, unsafe and unreliable public transport. Transport must be a basic need. It must not be as by the way, because we all use transport. All of us, we use cars to come here, and we flew here. So transport must be a basic need, but the workers also in urban settings often need help with expensive and reliable transportation. So those are the key things that are affecting all our cities, not in South Africa, but globally. So we need to look at how we include solutions to decentralize for community projects and prioritizing efficient and safe public and private transport. It's not me. It comes from the VNR. If you have read the VNR, those that are coming from South Africa, in that report on local government, this is a message. You can move to the next one. I put 11 because, as I said, all of them are, you think why is so big? And I explain. No poverty is happening in local government. Zero hunger is happening in local government. Climate action is happening in local government. Peace and strong institutions, earlier on, the presenters, including the minister, spoke about that one. Reduced inequality. So all of them are happening in local government. And I'm saying through UN, most of the resources should be directed there. Because if we have a proper infrastructure for local government, then everybody is going to be able to move freely and enjoying why municipalities are existing. So it's very key to ensure that at least we prioritize everything that happens in local government. The next one is a baseline. City of Cape Town in 2019 was the first city to present. However, we started the program in 2013 through UNDESA, UNDP, DPME. Within a short period of time, in 10 months, we managed to do this work. But how did we do it? Municipalities will tell you the story. We had spent a week with all the cities together to do the write-ups. Because if you want to do it like a distance SDGs, you're not gonna write the report, but we had to come and sit with everybody. So those are the cities: Buffalo City, City of Cape Town, second report, City of Johannesburg, City of Tshwane, eThekwini. Those are the big cities in the country. They are here. Kokama, that's a small municipality, but the synergy there is very beautiful. You can also do the same thing here, what you are doing in in Victoria Falls. They have the same jumping that Mr. Lucas normally used to do. But what I've seen in most of our municipalities is that you have this local economic development asset or natural asset, but we're not utilizing them proper. In one of the cities, I'll give an example. I asked, there's a ferry, I asked municipal employees, how many of you have been in the ferry? 20% of the all like this one said they've used the ferry. Then how do you expect to accelerate the implementation of the SDGs and tourism if you're not using the ferry? Who's supposed to use it if you don't use it? So it's supposed to be all of us. Mohale City, Mossel Bay, Rustenburg, and Umhlatuse. Those are the 10 cities that managed to do it at once. Perhaps maybe we might have set a pace setter from UN to have the bigger cities at once doing this report. I've seen Zimbabwe, they've done 8, so we must be collectively to add as a regional integration so that we do it collectively, because SDG number 13 is affecting all of us together, not only South Africa, but all of us. You can move there. I'm not going to talk about the one, but there's commitment to the SDGs at local level. We did this kind of engagement throughout. But the key one is mainstreaming SDGs, that across various local government processes, that at least the 10 cities, what they are doing is that they are applying this, including from infrastructure projects to community health programs, even though it's not our core competency, health. But it's happening in local government. And we've got municipal health. I think Salga is also having a conference in March and in February on municipal health. Why? You'll see when I spoke about how municipalities responded on COVID-19, because it was a serious pandemic across the globe, and municipalities had to respond. UNDP also funded one of the programs for Salga to assist municipalities. You can move to the next one. Leave no one behind. That's what we are saying. Several municipalities, including those that are going to talk about you, they've got programs for poverty reduction. At Tekwini, they've got what we call a neighborhood funded by UN Habitat. You do small-scale agriculture for the cities. So the cities that are going to come will talk about this issue. The issue of gender equality in South Africa, you know, it's a big issue. Education and youth empowerment. Hence, we had Gender Sonke Justice, we had civic society organization in the program where they were also helping us to accelerate and say, what is it that is required? Next one, gender mainstreaming is very key. Look, if you don't do this one, I'm telling you, and normally they were saying to the groups, who are the good project managers here? I'm asking you a question. Who are the good project managers? Can you raise if you know you are a good project manager? You see, it's only women that have raised their hands. I'm not saying we're not good, but I'm saying they are coordinate and make sure that everything is implemented properly. So it's only all of us, like myself, I didn't raise my hand. But if we want to change the SDGs, we should be also empowering women through entrepreneurship, not on catering. No. Key things that women should be able to implement and not using the strategies that are also affecting us. So leadership also is very key. And I'm glad the ministry is here, because once we have the buy-in of the ministry, and it was easy. I think in South Africa were proposing to make it where the president will sign and say, colleagues, this must be a standard for all the cities, including departments, some of the DPMEs here, so that we are able to accelerate this. 5 years is close, so we really need to push to do this thing proper. So gender-sensitive budgeting and policy planning, in some cities, they've been adopted to promote equality. Because if you don't have a budget for them, I'm telling you, you're still going to struggle. And you don't do a budget for women at the end of the project. Before you start with the project, you must say how many women are going to benefit here, and which projects are they going to do. That way, including the youth, you'll be able to accelerate the implementation of gender issues. Next one, but it must be in the policy. We come and talk, but there are no policies. So what other cities are doing on public-private partnerships, they'll talk municipalities. SMME support, they are doing a lot, because that's where we need to also do. And I'm going to share why this is going to be a key one for the country this year. local economic development plans are key. So we are also participating in SMMEs organized by other departments to ensure that at least when they do it, they start saying, what is the target that we wanted to do so that we are able to assist communities. Move to the other one. But SMMEs is very key. If we develop smaller businesses and we support it, then we're going to also ensure that at least we are reducing unemployment. Climate action and resilience building, I gave an example. You see, climate change is real. You can see with me. I'm not old, but it's an example that climate change is real. So there's a change. You are born, you grow, you mature, you decline. So that's climate change. Actually, we've been doing it, Secretary. We've been doing climate change, but because we wanted somebody to come and tell us we must put it in writing, we have been responding to SDGs. The only challenge that we are facing is that to put it down. The countries have been doing it, and look at the targets that the globe has been doing. So this is real. Mozambique, our friends there, 20 years, 21 years ago, there was a boy who was born in the tree. That was climate change, because the disaster that is happening is also affecting us every day today. But we really need to work together, not allow only Mozambique to respond, but all of us, we need to start to work together as a region to respond on these issues. And that's how we're going to be able to say there's a regional integration, not only for one city. Issues of renewable energy, we know we've got this challenge, not only in South Africa, but also across. The water wars are coming now. I think I did a study some 2014. We're going to also have a water wars soon. But at least for the last 2 months, we've been having rain. Maybe that's going to assist us. The green cities, municipalities actually that are here, the bigger 5 ones, including maybe Mukhali City and Umhlatuze, they are implementing the sustainable urbanization practice. But they will come and tell you about the green cities. This including sustainable transportation. Out of those, I know we're supposed to assist Buffalo City to put funding so that they can also have the same transport system. We've got a transport system in Joburg, city of Tshwane, the smaller municipalities, Rustenburg and city of Polokwane. Waste reduction strategies are very key, and that's where you can develop circular economy with waste. And city of eThekwini is doing well. City of Cape Town also, they've got what you call waste to energy infrastructure, but they are the one that are going to speak about that. We can move to the other one, health and well-being, SDG number 3. Then I'm saying most municipalities did respond to this one, but they managed to do their work based on that. I saw Dabi, they were also busy during that, but it has been central to the VLR. So how did we manage to do that? Because the work, when it started, the pandemic, it started in local government and was still affected by that. So we still need to ensure that at least the part of the messages they are talking about those ones. Move there. I think my time is coming. The next one. Education skills development. That's why we are here, all of us. But the previous speaker from UN and DPME, they spoke about youth empowerment. And municipalities are designing program, and you'll see employees coming here to talk about those. Employees, one of our youth who was a part of the champion, which is very key to create pathways to work and active citizenship. But there's something that is not here, which is indigenous knowledge. Are we able to share the knowledge by the older generation to come and share with that? That's what is missing when we put the youth empowerment, because they use technology, but there are other steps that we need to start to impart to the youth. I have a lot of stories that I can tell you about the generation, because I take time to sit with elderly, because they've got knowledge that they've been responding to climate change before we started to see that this thing is going to affect us. They knew when the rain will come, isn't it? So don't you think that they were also being responsible to respond to climate change? They knew. They will tell you, go home and prepare yourself, sit inside the house because the rain is coming. But today, I don't think we still have that kind of indigenous knowledge. But it's there because it's sitting somewhere. We need to. So in our engagement with municipalities, we had all elderly to come and share some of the stories with us. And we really need to bring, it's just the session is happening when the schools are open. We really need to bring the youth, the one that are at school, to come and also share with us, because schools are very key to respond to climate change. I was told the other time when I was driving, Madam Chair, I was driving and wanted to text Debbie and SDG committee. I was told by my daughter, hey, can you borrow me your phone, because my life is depending on you. If you are driving and you use a cell phone, it means you are putting me at risk. And then I realized these are the best teachers. And when they see somebody throwing a paper outside the window, they complain. They are the one that complains, because they want to take care of what? Of the environment. So you see, they're responding to climate change, SDG number 13 and keeping 12. You can move to the other one, so that stakeholder engagement, without this, that's how we managed to do it with our community participation. But the session tomorrow, early in the morning, they will share, Store will share how we have engaged participatory governance, because communities are very key. So we had the civic society organization that were driving the process. And let me tell you a story, Madam Chair, is that some of the services we didn't put money. They put money because they knew how to engage stakeholders. So we thought we know, but because they are already at that call phase, Mr. Amson, is that sometimes you don't have to have a legal or signing a partnership agreement. There are people that are willing to do it. You bring them, you include them at the beginning, the planning, they will raise their hand, will engage without you putting budget together. So that's how one of the lessons learned that we did was to bring everybody under one roof and say who's going to cover what. And they did. So transparency and local administration is very key. In local administration is very key. Move to the next one, accountability and transparency. This is very key. But with the use of technology, we can improve service access. As Salga, we also develop an app on waste. And what we did through this SDG, we initiated the first national urban forum to be established in Africa. Last year, we had that in October, before the World Urban Forum. But it did happen before the first African one. So we initiated it from the SDG forum, so that we are able to improve that. But technology was very key, particularly in rural and underserved areas. Who is not having a smartphone here? None. All of us have got smartphones. So here's an opportunity to use this, Carol. All of us have got smartphones. Even our kids, they've got smartphones. So we can put all the services under this one, because now you use apps to bank. Why only apps for banking? Why not apps for municipal services? Food for thought. Next to the one, data and monitoring for SDGs. There were challenges here, but state was supposed to be with us here. So there were voices regarding this, so that including municipalities, because when you talk about SDG and monitoring, without data, you can't win it. And department must be able to do what? To validate that data. So there is a relationship between, for this one, there must be a relationship between municipalities, between associations, between departments. So each and every department, when you can look at all these SDGs, there are departments here. So good health, there's a department in almost all our countries. So the data must be validated by this one. Stats, maybe they can come up with data, but the challenge that we experience, that it's local data that is missing. So we really need to go to the masses to do that. But we can move to the, I think, if I see this one, I know it's a future commitment. We need to use innovative solutions such as smart city initiatives, green technologies, and digital tools. These was the messages that came from the cities, not us, from the cities. If I'm not representing well, colleagues, just say it, make a noise. Because it's not me, it was you during that process. But here's an opportunity for Africa. We are hosting a G20, the B20, and Urban 20. So it will be proper, all the ministries that, we have a platform there, Carol and Mr. Amson, to talk about the work that has been done regionally, not South Africa, regionally. So that all of us that are going to for the next 2 days, 3 days. We are part of that, and we share with the other how we have moved from 2018 or 2019 to today. So it's an opportunity to also not go there and talk, but to sell for investment to come to our countries. The SADC on its own is very rich with the resources, including the mines that are here. So the B20, G20 and Urban 20 is hosted by the two cities, City of Tshwane and City of Johannesburg, and they are here. And the other one, the Urban Forum, sorry, I'm going to announce, even though I know that Salga didn't announce, but I'm not going to be short regarding that. We want to also bring eThekwini to host the Urban Forum so that we are inclusive on this one. So where UN Habitat has been assisting us to work with this one. So these are the opportunities that the work that we have started to do, while there are also other sessions that are going to come, we participate on them. The last slide is my favorite one. This one is my favorite one. No one knows everything. Everyone knows something. All knowledge resides in networks. So, and I'm saying that's local government. So we are overloaded. Migration happens in local government. Work are required by cities. So we are overloaded, even though other functions are not ours, but we are overloaded as local government. So how do we offload ourselves? It's through the networks, but the resources. So one of the things that we are proposing through you, I'm now lobbying. I'm going off the stage. I must use the opportunity. We want to start a global VLR and VSR network. There is a VLR. VSR is voluntary subnational reviews. So associations that are here from Mozambique and Zimbabwe, we can start that negotiation today, so that we are part of the. Then we can look at the UNDESA, UNDP to fund some of the resources together. Not them funding everything. We must also put something in there, because we must start to think differently now, that we build the railway line together, not somebody building for us. So we must start thinking like that. If they put 60, we put 40. If they put 70, we put 30, nomkita. So that the money that you're also putting will be able to ensure that at least you are making an impact in the society. Madam Chair, thank you very much. If I can sit here and talk about SDG, I'll talk the whole day.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matlo, for also highlighting how important government services are, and there's a great need to prioritize service delivery in overall. And with that being said, also we are just running behind schedule, so I would like to call upon the local government of South Africa, and then thereafter we'll take questions and answers. I would like to welcome Ms. Dabi Gounden from Buffalo City Metropolitan Municipality, Ms. Nirvana Skrikasoon from eThekwini Metropolitan Municipality, Mr. Stanley Nyanyira from Tshwane Metropolitan Municipality, Ms. Gloria Mupelwa from Rustenburg Local Municipality, and also Mr. Mpo Nemavunda from Johannesburg Metropolitan Municipality. Can we please welcome them with a round of applause? Oh, you can sit that side, please. While they prepare for the presentation, Dabi can start, and then we'll be followed by colleagues. Thank you.
I did send my presentation through. Hopefully you can project it. I'm not too sure. So. But while the technological sort of work is being done, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Darby Gounden. I'm the manager for International Intergovernmental Relations in Buffalo City Metro. And you may be wondering why I am leading this process on sustainable development. And based on no, that's not my presentation. The point is that one of the things about international relations is that it's already dealing with international issues at a local level from the municipality's perspective, and that gave us a little bit of an advantage in accelerated the voluntary local reviews, I think, based on the fact that we were already working on the international platforms with the Sustainable Development Goals, and it just was a matter of aligning the local programs and projects to what we were already doing on the international level. So I think that was one of the advantages of working with the Sustainable Development Goals in our municipality as such. One of the things about Buffalo City is that it is a medium-sized municipality located in a metropolitan municipality. There are 9 metropolitan municipalities in South Africa, and it contributes severely to the economic growth and well-being of the country. There are like sort of 9 regions of growth and development, and it's important that these municipalities lead when it comes to the changing the way you do things so that other municipalities can follow, and integratedly we contribute to the economic and social and the environmental well-being of our country as a whole. So my presentation is on now, and so let me quickly get to my own slides. But anyway, so basically what we did is I think when we started with the VLRs, it was to actually find out why are we involved in this process and why was it necessary. And I think for politicians, it's always necessary to see why are you doing this. Is it something that is going to benefit us, and how are we going to change things? And I think, and how is it going to change the city, and how is it going to change people's lives? And I think that's the question you normally ask as a politician. And I think that was one of the fortunate things, is that while we were starting to do this process, our executive mayor was actually part of a process where she was participating with the International Center for Local Democracy in Sweden. And they were doing mayor training sessions. And one of the things that they actually started with them was, what is sustainable development all about? And if you look at it, municipalities are in the business of sustainable development. Government as a whole is in the business of looking at sustainable development. Because those countries don't develop, if municipalities don't develop or provinces don't develop it, your country will never see a growth and development going forward. So we all are in the business of sustainable development. It's just a matter of aligning what you're doing on the ground to what you actually want to achieve in a more long-term vision collectively, not only as one city, one province, one country, but the whole world as a nation. And I think that is very, very important to understand that sustainable development is probably just a buzzword now because everybody's talking about it and it's something we're doing right now. But in reality, it's something that we all are doing. It's just actually contextualizing it in terms of the UN Sustainable Development Goals and what we all pledged as the United Nations itself. So basically, we had to ask those questions, and that's the message we took to councillors and our management, because management at the management level, they always know best. They're engineers, for example, and they don't really talk to the term of sustainable development. For example, our engineering department, when they actually look at electricity, they look at the conventional method of just plugging poles in the ground and putting up electricity. But they knew innovative ways. For example, how do we harness solar energy? How do we harness biogas? How do we look at green ways of doing things? And I think that's the sort of topic we brought to the fore with us working with the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that is very important. You can go into the second bit. Right. So what we started to do was, interestingly, is that as all of the previous South African speakers, we take our cue from the National Development Plan. And I think that's a very important guiding tool, because alignment of all 3 levels, thinking is like it's like a very synergetic approach to looking at development. So you need to take your cue from the National Development Plan. It's very clear on what the deliverables of South Africa are. What are the expectations? Where does the country want to go? And what are the things that we need to intervene and make better? And I think that's the good guidance for South Africa as a roadmap of where we want to be as South Africa. And I think the second thing is our own city development strategy. Of course, our province has its own strategy as well, which we align to as local government. But when it comes to the city development strategy, we have a 30-year strategy for our municipality, and we try to create those synergies and alignments. For example, we have 5 goals that we actually set, and we call them pillars. For example, one of those things is innovative and productive. We want to be innovative and productive. We want to be a green city. We want to be a connected city that looks at transportation and all of those other things, energy and all those things. You're spatially transformed. Remember South Africa's historical past of apartheid and all inequalities. So you want to be spatially transformed. You want to be integrated. And those are the things that we've actually linked up to the Sustainable Development Goals as well. And of course, we also look at well-governed. Well-governed is very important in terms of, for example, looking at how do we actually make sure that all monies that are actually put towards development goes towards development. How do we actually build trust in our communities in terms of saying that the money that they're actually paying on a daily basis or a monthly basis towards water, electricity, services is actually used most effectively and efficiently in their best interest. So that is sort of what you call a pact that you make with the public. So they actually build trust. So I think that's actually very important. And what are we investing to change things like inequality, your gender inequalities? In terms of quality education, how are we investing in those? How are people capacitated to deliver on services? And then how do we leverage of our partnerships between all stakeholders in terms of getting our city from one step to another step further? And I think our biggest goal as a city and maybe as a country as a whole is to bring people from poverty into a middle income sort of level, so that they actually contribute to services. It contributes to local economic development. Ultimately, it actually changes the face of where your country is heading or your city is heading. So I think that is very important. You need to look at development very holistically. From that process, we actually looked at how do we align those with the SDGs in terms of your sectors. For example, how do you cluster? For example, if you're working with people, what are their deliverables in terms of social? What are they looking for in terms of social impacts and sectors? What are the goals that impact on them? If you look at prosperity, what are the goals that we need to look at in terms of prosperity? If you look at the planet, environment, water, whatever it may be, what are those goals that are impacting? What are the sectors that are impacting on those? And if you want to, without peace, believe you me, you're not going to get any development going. So it's very important. Peace, security, and the things of integration and partnerships actually a very important part of the five mix in terms of making sure that they align to the VLRs. And if you look at the SDGs, they actually speak about those areas, that in order to do any sort of development and actually take your SDGs forward, you need to focus on social, economic, environment, and the peace and the partnerships itself. So we clustered them in that format. The next slide, please. Right. We actually prepared very early. We started in March, by the way, working on the SDGs. And of course, we ended in June 2024 with our final report. And of course, we're submitting more information because since then till now, a lot of things has happened within a space of time, which actually influences where the report is heading. So that timeline has actually now increased a little bit to say what else can we add to this report that shows that we are working towards sustainable development and what are the things that we need to change and make better. Next slide, please. Okay, what are the challenges? I think first of all for us is the issue that not everybody was on the same page when it came to sustainable development, including the own municipality. They need to be brought aboard, and that actually takes time, and we had limited time because in terms of the pressures of delivering on the VLRs, there's limited time in terms of getting people all on board. But you had to focus on sectors, and we were lucky in that we actually had existing structures within the municipalities with NGOs, civic society organizations, business, other government departments, and our own municipalities, forums working with the people on the ground. So those structures became vehicles to ensure that sustainable development goals was localized, and the VLR became a result. So the second thing was that, of course, there were tight schedules. I must say, there were major challenges in terms of getting it done. I think everybody wanted to do this because the Sustainable Development Goals have been there for a while, but it's just that we actually have not really trying to achieve them, or if we are achieving them, we've not been reporting on them. And I think that's what's important in terms of this. I think is the difficulty in gathering data. And interestingly, as a local government, we all produce a lot of data. We do a lot of good work, but that data and that information is not actually recorded or captured in a manner that's palatable to people to see that you're achieving the goals. And I think that's very important for us to understand, is that we need to set up mechanisms for that. It's very important to do that. And that's what we identified as a challenge, and we needed to correct that. The second thing, the fourth thing or the fifth thing, is that the verification. South Africa has its own verification process, and that takes time as well. So we're hoping in our next report that we table that we'll actually have gone through that process. So a lot of the data is very localized data from the municipality itself in terms of quantifiable information that we could actually got, and quality information as well. And of course, there was limited resources. We did speak about that. I think everyone had problems because remember, we're a municipality, we budget according to a cycle, and SDGs was never part of that cycle. And now, going forward, that's something we're actually looking forward to in terms of ensuring that it becomes part of every single budget, because every one of those goals need to be achieved in some form and manner, and it needs to be actually considered going forward. I think let's get on to the next slide, please. Lessons learned and actions. I won't go through a lot of those things, but what we actually identified, sorry, my voice is quite loud. I think one of the important things I spoke about was the data gathering and recording, is that the functionality of our knowledge management unit and research unit, and how to actually improve their functionality. And that takes a lot of training and capacity building. So you must understand those weaknesses that came out of the system and how do you strengthen those. And that was one of our priorities now going forward, is to do that. The second thing is that that in terms of government as a whole, that we don't actually look at qualitative and quantitative data, and those are very, very important, because if you're looking at planning for a city or a region or a country as a whole, you need to have data from what you're working from, because that actually quantifies what you're going to do. It sets targets, but also it actually tells you how do you want to go about in achieving those. If you don't have that data, how are you going to actually, so is it thumb suck or is it just a hunch? You can't work on those going forward, because you need to have credible data in order to do things. And I think bridging the gap between stakeholders, I think it's very important that to bring in like elements like public participation. What role do they play in terms of localizing information like the Sustainable Development Goals? How do you improve communications with the local communities, and making sure that the SDGs are in the forefront of everybody's mind, because we're human, we tend to forget things, we need to be reminded, and that's an important part of communication, is to send a reminder, to educate, inform, create understanding. Those are important elements of communications, so it needs to be considered. And then there's special programs. Now, special programs talks to issues like women issues, young people's issues, elderly issues. Tobago spoke about elderly issues. Also your HIV/AIDS, your vulnerable groups. How do you actually make sure that they're also part of this process? So the stakeholder involvement is actually very important. And also the strengthening of multi-level governance. For example, right now, South Africa is on the trajectory of working with the district development model and the One Plan. And this actually talks very well into the SDGs talk very well into this, that sort of understanding and taking it forward. And I think this is an opportunity for us. And the other thing is actually also bringing in private sector. I think Ratabile was actually very, very on point when she spoke about private sector. We are fortunate in Buffalo City is that we have Mercedes-Benz. It's produced locally in our city. It's one of the biggest plants. And now Mercedes-Benz, in terms of their targets, they have certain sustainability targets that they must achieve. They've probably been doing this all by themselves all this time, until this was brought into the fore, where they realized, you know what, we realized we could partner with them, they could partner with us, and that is something that we both could, it's a win-win relationship. So we've actually started an agreement between the both in terms of a compact, so we can work with each other as business and ourselves, and also improve the relationship. For example, Mercedes-Benz right now is actually putting out solar panels in their plant. They're going green, of course. And remember, with them, constantly innovation changes the way they do things, and they're always going into the forefront of being green. So what we decided to do was work with them, and one of the things that they're going to be actually doing is giving us the excess solar energy to the municipality for free. So that is sort of relationships you want to develop with the private sector, because if you can get that energy for free, it means that the stability in Buffalo City's grid is actually the city is more stable in terms of delivering energy, but also out of it, there will be other projects that we could actually develop with Mercedes-Benz, because there's other projects that they want to work in terms of water, sanitation, and those areas. So those are things that the next step now we'll be working with them on. The next slide. Thank you. Of course, I spoke about our structured forums. We do have, deliberate forums in the city that actually encourage consultation, conservation, conversations with each other, but also presenting a lot of the things like the integrated development plan and our city structures. Before they go to council approval, they go through public participation processes. Then, of course, the data. One of the things that we found in terms of municipal planning is that we don't do it in terms of, we have a system called wards in South Africa. I don't know if other municipalities in the other countries do, but wards actually talk about 7,000 people in an area, okay? And we have 50 wards. So for each of the 50 wards, what we realize, when we do development, we do it like widespread. We just choose things to do and we do. But you can't go on doing that forever. You need to actually become a more structured approach. And one of the things that we looked at was ward profiling, understanding that each ward has assets. For example, if a ward is near the sea, it's its biggest asset, you know? How do you leverage of that so that ward can benefit from growing, developing, but focused on certain things? Because I know that when we go into wards, mostly they will ask us for is a hall, a clinic, you know, those sort of things. But they don't realize that they've got an asset of the sea, and how do you actually maybe do a boat trip from one place to another and improve tourism? So they don't see that as their ward. And that's why you got to open local people to their own development, to say, if I live in this ward, what is my assets? How many electricity poles do I have? How can I improve it by having solar energy? Those are the things that we need to start doing, is changing, talking to people on the ground so that they actually become involved in their own development and take it forward. And then you'll find less likelihood that there will be damage to property, vandalism, stealing, and all those things. That could change. So I think that's very important to start working from grassroots up, understanding. And that actually helps the municipality as well in terms of how do we budget for each ward? What are the programs you can run in each ward? And how do you strengthen capacity in that ward to deliver on whatever they need to deliver on? And I think that's development has got to change. You got to develop it by walkabout, by the way. You got to walk on the ground and see what you have and see how you change it for the better of the people. Performance management and financial management. Okay, that actually is very important for us, because performance management is tied to our head of directorates, their performance scorecards. They actually don't get paid a performance bonus until you meet certain targets of the municipality. So we're actually trying to align the SDGs to their performance, including our financial management system, because one of the things it's called your next slide. It's your municipal standard chartered account system, which the National Treasury has put on all municipalities, and I think the government as a whole follows a standard accounting procedure. That actually is a requirement, but most of our municipalities are not fulfilling that requirement. And if you start doing it to aligning to financial and performance management, you'll find automatically you'll start achieving sustainable development in a more structured manner and in a more tangible manner, making the impacts that we want to see on the ground. Of course, improving communication and advocacy, that's something we actually realize that there's more need for communication and advocacy of the SDGs. The more people know, the more actually familiar they become with how it aligns to me. For example, if I'm an environmentalist, you're green, you're being, the climate action becomes my number one priority. And how will I, in terms of an individual, contribute to climate action? In terms of maybe how I manage waste, how I separate waste, those sort of things. I think it's very important to start looking at those things from that level as well. Then we need to measure impact annually. I think that the impact, understanding how we're achieving the goals is very important for us as a municipality. And that actually is something that we probably never did before, but now we can do, because we have a benchmark. You have a starting point and you have an ending point, so you can actually see how you've moved from one to the next and how you'll continuously try to achieve the other goals. You can move to the next slide. Okay, What are the opportunities? For us, of course, externally, we've always seen opportunities. Things are changing a lot on the international level, by the way. So partnerships may not become not always be what they are. And we need at some point as countries to see how independent we are of the West. And that is a fact. So I think it's very important that while these partnerships are good and fine, we need to utilize these opportunities to become more self-sufficient, more independent, and actually bring our countries up into a middle income countries that we want to see. And I think that's where we actually see as an opportunity for us, that we can utilize this opportunity to get our citizens into a middle income so they pay for services, there's income for development and all that. Otherwise, you'll have this cross-pollination pollination of rich cross-subsidizing poor, and that can only last for so long as well. So that has got to change as well. So this is an important aspect of that we got to realize. But for us, we're fortunate. We have sister city partnerships. For example, with the city of Germany, with one of the cities in Germany, it's called Oldenburg. We have a 30 million project, and that actually is looking at water and sanitation, and actually converting our water treatment plant to actually deliver on biogas going forward. We're looking at the plant being solar, because one of the things that this plant is near the sea. So when there's no energy, as you know, South Africa, it does have some issues with energy at the moment. It actually spills into the sea, and that's an environmental issue as well. So with the bit being solar, it can be taken off grid. It doesn't contribute to the negative environmental issues. And also it's actually functioning optimally. But more importantly about the plant is about the digitization, is that the plant can be seen from a digital perspective. You can see the plant in Germany, what's happening there. And if there's advice needed, you don't have to actually now send somebody you can do it all electronically. You can send guidance and information so that the plant can be fixed locally. So that is something that we're looking at now. It's a 3 years project, and it's going very, very well because they're there. We have trained our process controllers because, running wastewater treatment plants and water plants is a real science. It's not taking somebody and just putting them there, expect them to do a good job. You need to have really skilled people. And I think training and investing in training and development of our own staff, upskilling them, and providing them with the resources and tools is important for them to deliver good services. So it's important that we consider that when we're looking at those. Partnership with business, we just, as I said, we've got an agreement with Mercedes-Benz, but in December this year, we signed a partnership agreement with the Chamber of Business, Mercedes-Benz, because the reason being is that business sees how they can take our city forward economically in terms of investor relations and development. But it's our job to actually ask for them to come aboard. So we signed an agreement with them, and we got a number of projects with an action plan of what we want to achieve jointly as business. For example, training of informal, you have these guys that sit on the side of the road. They probably are, I know in some African countries I've seen, they actually sell plants and things like that. You can how to work with them to formalize them in a way. Then you have people who are doing welding on the side of the room. How do you formalize them as part of business, giving them the right tools, skills, and also the proper facilities to train? So that is some of the projects we are working on. And that is actually important projects for small, medium, micro enterprise development. Then there's partnership with NGOs and civil society. We have a good relationship with civil society organization and in our city and NGOs. And I think that's important to strengthen those relationships, continue with those, because I think they're an important part of also submitting their report on the SDGs. Because without them, we're not going to be able to do the civil society issues that are on the ground, your issues of gender-based violence, the issues of crime and things like that. They are very key and important in the value chain. And that's why we need to develop a social compact with them. And then, of course, with the partnership with government departments, including universities and colleges, because research and all those things come from universities and colleges. And also, the partnership with government departments is very important because government departments provide the resources from the provincial and national level towards the local government. Because as Tuboga was saying, we operate in a local space. Every development takes place in a local space. It's not in the air. And it's very important that they become part of that development trajectory that we as a city have for ourselves. Then of course, I spoke about the district development model that South Africa has, which actually is the vehicle to actually enable the sustainable development goals to be localized more tangibly, I think, on the ground. Then there's also the local and ward compact. And this is what I spoke about, where the profiling of wards is so important for local development. Because for us, it actually tells us in a year which wards we'll be working with, what are the integrated projects that you need to work with, and how do we actually enhance, what are the ones that are catalytic, have impact on another ward? How can you share resources? What are the ones that actually going to turn the city around? So we won't be just throwing money for the sake of throwing money and maintaining the city, but actually looking at strategic projects that are enablers, job creation, that have a developmental agenda for the citizens as well. So I think those are the opportunities that we actually identified, and actually having a compact with each of them at that level. So I think that's important for us. By the way, even our opposition party in our municipality was amazed when we presented this thing, because I think they've been trying to find ways to see how do we fit in and how does our wards fit in. And they actually want to see this in action now, this local compact of working with wards and to say, how does each ward actually contribute to the greater good? And you'll see that you'll be able to achieve the sustainable development goals collectively in that approach as well. So the last points I think I've got to make now. Next slide there. Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm almost at the end now. I spoke about a lot of things, and I think one of the things that we've actually been working on is all the goals and how do we actually look at South Africa's agenda. If you speak of South Africa as a whole, one of the things about South Africa is that we want to move away from what happened in the past. We want to move forward. And the Sustainable Development Goals offers opportunities for forward movement. And I think this is why we've actually identified all the goals, all the stakeholders, and how we collectively can actually move forward and drive our agenda. So thank you very much.
So thank you so much for that. Without wasting time, I would like to call on Ms. Nivana, followed by Mr. Stanley. And please, can we keep it to 5 minutes? Thank you. You are standing between lunch. Thank you.
You know, normally I have graveyard shift, so we're used to cutting it down in the graveyard shift. Good afternoon, colleagues. Whilst my presentation is loading, I did email it. Let me start by introducing myself. I'm Nivana Srikisun from the eThekwini municipality in Durban, South Africa. So in terms of a little bit of context, when the presentation loads, you'll see it. But eThekwini is the third largest municipality in South Africa. We have, at the moment, a population of approximately 4.2 million. We are 68% rural. So 68% of the land within the municipality is rural. We have a lot of tribal land again. So we're not collecting as much income as we should. And therefore, it becomes another challenge because of the financing, etc. We have about 30,000 employees within the municipality of eThekwini. I'm on the next slide already. Thank you. We have plus minus 2,500 kilometers of land coverage, and our budget, that's including capital and operating expenditure, is in the region of about 50 billion. The majority of the households within the city are indigent in nature, in other words, living below the poverty line in the city. Thank you. So our progress to date, very quickly, I've just indicated it there, and you can read. In the interest of time, maybe I'll just concentrate particularly on our Open SDG portal and the SDG Institutionalization Committee. So essentially what happened within eThekwini municipality is the city took a decision many, many years ago to start working on the SDGs, but it was not formalized. In 2020, we went to the council within the municipality, the council being our highest level of authority within the city, and they took a decision that we form an SDG Institutionalization Committee within the city. The SDG Institutionalization Committee comprises of representatives from every department or unit within our municipality, where we come together to discuss issues around the SDGs. So how are we planning? How are we reporting? How are we gathering data? How do we collaborate to make a bigger impact instead of just working department by department? You can move on to the next slide, thank you. So that committee essentially was formally adopted and formed by our council, And they then proceeded to align the SDGs to the budget and to our city's monitoring tools. So like Darby was saying, monitoring is extremely important. So we looked at how do we go about monitoring what we are doing around the SDGs in the system. Municipalities in South Africa are required to have what we call the SDBIP, or the Service Delivery and Budget Implementation Plan. And that's essentially a plan of how cities spend their budget. So we aligned the SDGs to the content of what appeared in the SDBIP to make reporting and monitoring much easier. We streamlined the reporting so there was no duplication. That way you don't get people saying, you know, you're wasting my time on administration. I should be doing my work as opposed to reporting. When it's streamlined, it's easier for them to report. We then looked at the SDG indicators that were suggested by the UN, and we localized those indicators within the city. Some indicators were adopted as they were, some we changed the wording slightly, and some we found that were not even applicable, firstly within the South African context, but secondly within the city. So we changed those indicators. We then proceeded to take those indicators and we began looking for the data to report on those indicators. As a city, we took a conscious decision to report on all of the SDGs if we could find data for those SDGs. So we developed an open data portal that is included on our strategic hub of the city. Tebogo earlier on mentioned the importance of digitization and data. So the strategic hub of the eThekwini municipality is an open data portal where we have analyzed quite a number of data sets that belong to the city, as well as from our partners, NGOs, and CSOs in the city. And we represent them as different dashboards that can be used for planning purposes and monitoring purposes. So the open SDG portal sits on the strategic hub, and we report and update the progress on that strategic hub on an annual basis. Thereafter, we continued with the process of data collection, and this started many years ago. As I was indicating, the Institutionalization Committee was adopted in 2020. It was interrupted by COVID, and then when our colleagues at SALGA came through with the request for municipalities to volunteer to produce the VLR, we then agreed to be one of those municipalities and then finalized our VLR late last year. Success factors are indicated there. Predominantly the fact that we had very good support from our political leadership in the city. That took us quite a long way. And then, of course, I'll come to some of them later on. Our learnings from the VLR process included the fact that whatever we do, colleagues, is not new as municipalities. Our mandate is to provide services. We just need to be able to align those mandates of providing services to the SDGs. And that's one of the core things that we found. When we went out and we started introducing the SDGs to colleagues and talking about it, all we had to say is, you're doing this project. It's aligned to, for example, SDG 6. We're not asking for anything new. Just improve and ramp up on the processes and report so that we can know where we stand as far as the SDGs are concerned. As we moved through the process of developing the VLRs, I must say we found that the global guiding elements were extremely important. It really is a very good guide on how to develop those VLRs. The third point is the layout, the formatting, and the presentation. We all started with varying layouts, but the guiding elements provide a nice format that you can follow to prepare the VLRs. And then the finer details about localizing the indicators. Darby did indicate that we had data. The data is in varying formats, and as part of our localization process within the city, we decided to use some of the city indicators as well. But through the process, what we found is that the city indicators and the data that we were collecting doesn't necessarily follow the same method that Statistics South Africa follows. And so it became a little bit of a challenge to use that data. Although we were using only verified data from within the city, it still does not all follow the South African Statistical Quality Assurance Framework. So one of the things we're doing at the moment is taking the city's data through that process voluntarily. We're in training with quite a number of colleagues within the city, so they will start doing the verification on their own. Thank you. Challenges and solutions, very quickly. I won't go through it. Darby spoke about funding, conflicting priorities and diaries. Colleagues don't have time, plain and simple. So it's a matter of how do we make life simpler for them, like I was talking about with the streamlining of reporting, sharing of information, and easier ways of doing things. Lack of data for reporting, I'm not going to go into. And then data not being relevant to the local context. A lot of the data that we found was available at national level or within the South African context at provincial level. We need to find ways to disaggregate the data so that cities are able to report. Thank you. Poor alignment amongst the three spheres of government. We found that even with the previous work that was being done on the voluntary local reviews and on SDGs in cities, our first VNR didn't seem to have that data included. I must say, as part of this process that we've been undertaking, and many thanks to the colleagues from the UN, it actually helped us to deal with this issue. So there's more cascading of information, and we can now see where the data is fitting into the VNR. Lack of data on SDG expenditure. Dabi spoke about the Municipal Standard Chart of Accounts. I won't go there. There's still very limited awareness of the SDGs, colleagues, and I think this is something we really, really need to ramp up on. If you move to the next slide, just a quick idea of within eThekwini what we've done. We're working with youth and scholars to enhance their exposure to the SDGs. We've undertaken an SDG survey within the city for our employees, and then it tells us basically what their level of knowledge is about SDGs and indicated some of the work that we still had to do within the city. You can move, thank you. This is just an indication of some of the community awareness that we've done around the SDGs. We've got murals around the city that we've started painting. This is the first 5. There's another 5 that have been commissioned for the current financial year. So that's in progress, and they concentrate on one SDG at a time. But it's not just painting the murals, and I think this is what I want to concentrate on. The artist that we've commissioned actually has workshops with members of the community in the region around which the mural is being painted. So he workshops them on the SDG, what it's about, and based on the content that is curated from the workshop, the mural is designed, and then those community members, if they want to, come on board with him to help to paint those murals. The one on the top right-hand side is on SDG 17, that was work in progress. And we essentially got a lot of our partners from the city to come in and to paint that mural with him as well. So it was a really nice day. Thank you, you can move. Opportunities, colleagues, again, I won't go through the detail of all of these, but a lot of the opportunities that we've realized within the city have come about as partnerships. As Darby was indicating, it's not always about, starting these partnerships, bringing in the money and stopping there. It's about how do we build the expertise locally. And so a lot of our partnerships are not just financial in nature, they're also technical partnerships, where the technical skills are then passed on to members of our staff and to residents of the city. Very quickly, the first one, the homelessness project, we approached the Southern Sun Group in Durban, and they trained and took on 20 previously homeless people that lived on the streets as part of their staff. And it's an ongoing project. There's another batch in the current financial year. They've also provided them with housing, etc. So they're now off the streets. Again, ongoing project. Human security assessments, Boko mentioned it earlier. That's a project that we undertook in partnership with UN Habitat. And it looked at assessing human security within an area in the city called Kwandengezi. But for that project, we went out to the community, worked with the community, and asked them what do they think are the problems in the city? How do we improve safety and security within their area? And they co-developed the action plans with us. Part of that was the community saying, there's a lot of people that are not working in the city. Can we start food gardens within our area? And so that's one of the actions that came out of that. SDG awareness I've spoken about. The Reflect Africa project is a waste to energy project where we are taking waste, organic food and fruit and vegetables, which is organic waste from a bulk market in the city, and we're converting that to waste. There's hydropower projects that are being done in the city. The Buffelsdry landfill, it's an old landfill, and in partnership with a team from Bremen in Germany, we've started a reforestation project on that old landfill. It's now decommissioned. The community, again, has been brought on board to actually plant the trees, etc., and they're reimbursed for every tree that they plant. So it's also income generating for them. Transformative Riverine Management Project is a project that seeks to clean alien invasives from our rivers. The alien invasive plants are then dried and used in another project that I'll talk about just now. Our water reuse project is a project that we undertook where grey water is cleansed within the city up to a point where it can be used by our paper mills within the city. So we're not using drinkable water for business purposes. Community gardens and agri-hubs, I've spoken a little bit about that. There's partnerships with the British High Commission where they're looking at how we develop a transit-orientated strategy within the city. So transit-orientated development along our transport corridors. How do we then measure and monitor what is happening within our informal settlements? And our latest project with them is the development of a data strategy for eThekwini municipality, but bringing on board our neighboring municipalities that exist around eThekwini. The idea being we don't exist in isolation. What happens in eThekwini is dependent on what happens around us, and they are also dependent on what happens in eThekwini. So it's a combined project. The data strategy itself was almost ready, but it's talking about how do we collect data, how do we store it, how do we ensure quality of data, and then how do we use that data responsibly. Number 11 is on the trilateral report on the SDG indicators with Bremen. I won't go into detail on that because I'll be presenting on that later on. These are just some very quick pictures on another set of partnership projects. Our composting work with DUT, the budget prioritization model that we did with University College London that looks at SDG 6 and how can you prioritize your budget in line with SDG 6. The Isitumba Travels Adventure Park, again, how do you use what exists in nature and in the communities to bring in income and generate tourism opportunities? With Bremen, it's our Kwamashu Waste Beneficiation Center, the alien invasive species that I spoke about earlier. Those plants are dried together with dirt and dust that's swept up from the streets in the community in Kwamashu, waste glass that's then broken down into little particles, rubber from shoemaking industries in the area that's chopped up into little particles again, and then bottle caps from plastic bottles that are chopped into little particles. They all mixed with concrete, and then they form those concrete blocks that are used to pave schools. Thank you. You can move on, and I think that should be my last slide. But we also have an early warning system. As we know, climate change is real. So we partnered with the University of KwaZulu-Natal to develop an early warning system that can detect when there's going to be a possibility of flooding in the city. That message is then sent out to members of the community to warn them so they can move to higher ground. In conjunction with the Organ Donor Foundation and Autism SA, the city undertook a project to create benches that are then covered with those mosaic tiles by members of the autistic community, and that's in our botanic gardens. We've got the Sisonke Food Garden, and then, of course, with the Mayor's Migration Council from New York, they are helping us on the project called the Karibu Care Center. That is a center targeted at helping members of the homeless community, so refugees, migrants, and internally displaced people. Next slide, please. Okay, I won't go through this, but this is also another one of our projects. It's called the Digital Twin. That's helping us create a digital version of the city for planning purposes, for disaster planning, et cetera, et cetera. It's in the pilot stages. That's just some screenshots from what the pilot looks like at the moment. Thank you.
Hi, colleagues. Good afternoon. My name is Stanley Nyanyirai. I'm the Director of Research and Strategy from the city of Tshwane. You guys are too quiet for me this afternoon, so I don't know what's happening. I'm highly compromised because I'm from Harare. I'm a Harare boy, but I'm heading up strategy and research in the city of Tshwane, which was normally known as what? City of Pretoria. So I'll be speaking from that perspective, so please forgive me if I was to straddle between the lines. As it is coming up, what I thought I would do is probably start with the key conclusions and the lesson that we learned from developing our first baseline study. I think that would be probably a summary of it. Then I will move into, for example, some of the next steps that we thought we would do. Then, of course, I will finish with how we developed the whole report. Next slide. So I think I'll just start from a very, I don't know, awkward way of looking at things. That global policy, sometimes they look at national agenda. If you look at Paris Agreement, Agenda 63, or the current SDGs, they really assume that everything happens there at the national level. Yet the design of cities is actually such that they take cue from the national, and sometimes it's difficult then to look at the reverse aspect of things, because if you look at probably economic growth, uh, for example, and also the future of the populations is actually urban in nature. Hence, I think we always think that we needed to really look at this from city level, looking at the role I think cities play. And what we thought we to do, one of the things that we thought we'd look at is that telling our own story as Tshwane of the South Africa's capital city, leveraging both on our strategy and of course looking at some of the issues that we're grappling with, like water. We're told really don't write a very glossy report. It's to tell the story. I mean, for example, in Tswana we have water issues. Harare probably the same thing, Lake Chivero issues. But also some of the narratives that can come out of it so that you can galvanize partnerships as you go. And of course, we thought that the Limits to Growth report of 1972 underplayed the role of, sort of the role of cities or people moving into urban centers and how that urban dividends can be capitalized. But so what is happening now is simply urbanization of poverty, where, for example, there are many people that have written from sustainability aspect whereby we are urbanizing poverty, whereby maybe we're talking about the planet of slums. Informal settlements growing up, and the difficulty in addressing both water and energy access to those people. And of course, how do we then write a narrative to say that in as much as we have this growing wave of urbanization, how do we grapple with that access? Probably that would be key towards a better world for all. And the idea then into how do we free up resources, whereby you look at changing business as usual towards sustainability and city resilience policy, whereby we say that when we look at probably the city of Tshwane, we are using probably 3 times world average in terms of water consumption per capita. You compare to cities like cities in Sweden or Denmark, they are probably 1/3 of us, and we are saying we can't continue as that. Energy, the same thing, given some of the challenges that we are facing also in terms of energy. We also thought that is a key conclusion. One of the things that we learned that has been spoken the whole morning is about how to strengthen governance. Okay, out of 3 years, we've had 9 mayors. That's actually a count, right? And then it becomes difficult to see policy through. Whatever you plan this year cannot be seen next year. We had a mayor who was there only for 3 days, and thereafter there was a new one. And of course, to follow that through becomes very difficult in terms of planning to stabilize governance aspects from the top, and how the administration should actually take the policy going forward. And also, how do we underpin some of the institutional frameworks that have been developed going forward? We also thought that in the absence of a long-term strategy for us as Tshwane, because of the political issues, the SDGs actually, they make for it, whereby they galvanize a number of partnerships coming out of that, because we're looking at a city with the departments more than, 27, 37 departments total. If you look at the SOEs that are within that city. And also, if you really did do it very well, you are simply aligning your planning, budgeting, partnerships in a nice way, and then you always avoid what UN always speak about, reducing the burden of reporting, because in every aspect of the city, somebody is requesting a report somewhere. So our work should not be seen as if we are burden to officials. Rather, when it is seamlessly integrated, it simply means you are reporting things that you are already doing. We also thought that, it's also rated by both Buffalo City and eThekwini, how do we mine data in the city? And of course, the city of Cape Town, the first city of South Africa perhaps to come up with a data strategy. They've taken 8 years to come to that. It's very difficult to develop that. For example, how do we collect data? Who collects data? How do you map it? For what purpose? For example, one department like energy, they just want to go and fix electricity poor, but the guys probably from another department, they want it for something else. So to integrate the two becomes always difficult. Hence, the next diesel and petrol is your data, as opposed to taking data, give consultants, package it, give you back, set the city, it's an expensive. It's about really looking at. Unfortunately, South Africa, when you report anything else, our national statistics organization, that's as a takes precedence. No matter how good your data is from probably the World Bank or IMF or anyone else, your national Statistical Organization takes precedence. And of course, their data sometimes is not always accurate because of the methodology or design of again, that data. It could be census, it could be sampling, it could be whatever. And they are the people that really think that can be improved. Yet it's expensive to get that data in a system. So that is always a conundrum that you need to sort of look at. We also thought that maybe what is very important is to look at going about 17 as a conclusion from our side. How do we work with the partners? For example, we have just announced ourselves as an auto city. For example, Nissan and BMW are going to build probably one of the biggest plants in Africa in Pretoria and probably export those cars to Africa and beyond. Probably we'll be looking at how then do we work with those, like the Mercedes-Benz Deputy spoke about, probably as a narrative in our next iteration of reporting. We thought that was important to speak to some of the cities around the world that have been very instrumental or probably have got what we call early mover advantages. City of New York, City of Cape Town, Mwanza from Tanzania, Harare, we're here to talk to you guys, I'm sorry for this, and also the city of Shimakawa in Japan that have developed the Shimakawa model on how they do, as a local municipality, need to localize SDGs, for example. These are some of the SDGs that we looked at precisely, and of course, there was a methodology that was used to come up with this, just not the numbering. We thought that we wanted to do everything. It's not just possible under the circumstances. Why these SDGs? We thought that they speak more to the nuance of cities rather than everyone else who might want for us to make more of that. And of course, it's difficult then to separate one go to the another because of the indivisibility and how they're interconnected. Of course, you can't raise one goal over the other. It then creates challenges in terms of how it is sort of configured. Next slide. This is just our methodology. I don't think I want to go through it because of time. I think let's move on to the next steps so that I think we can understand. Let's move next slides. Next slides. Yeah, somewhere there. So it will be important, I think, for cities that are beginning to ride these variables to benchmark your work with leading cities, as I said. We have done some sort of discussions with the City of New York, Cape Town, Jaima is here, eThekwini, Nirvana, and also Johannesburg to check how they are allocating the work of SDGs of in their city. And there's no one-size-fits-all for all these cities. As cities are different in different important ways. So probably after our first baseline that we just did, we needed to take stock to say, was it the best way of locating the work of city in the mayor's office or CEO's office or somewhere else? But also what Nirvana spoke about, how then do we capacitate our work within the city? A committee which advises from the external, the universities, research institutions, and everyone else. And of course, the internal one that drives the work. But of course, to appoint an SDG champion in every department or every aspect of the city so that they do take ownership of that. That when you write or when you have some meetings, they first talk about SDGs. And to say, for example, you needed just to be more aware, the awareness aspect of it rather than probably done by 2 or 3 or 4 people, because one, you do it on a voluntary basis. There's no money to do this actually. Then of course, how do you sort of then localize or streamline or embed SDGs in an institution? South Africa, for example, the Integrated Development Plan or a political strategy is the one document where all projects that need to be funded, they go through, without which there's no funding. So it's about really embedding that through. That's what when people read your program for the city, that where the interest is, they also understand how you are embedding that. And of course, we thought you might have to develop a community of practice so that you speak to cities that have been working. And I think it will be very important to know from that wisdom of cities. So you learn more from how they failed to do it rather than from their successes. You won't get much from their success. For example, in ourselves, SDG number 6, we was in Denmark. We go there every year. They also come to Swane to look at water issues around Swane. I want to look at probably the way we are going to do it. Let's make the next slide. We are going to do our next iteration. So we're going to take one lens, energy, for example. I've taken energy. And then when we write the next VR, we are not going to sort of write it as a story which really is cascaded throughout all of 17 SDGs. We're going to look at probably one SDG and then use that as a thematic lens to write our story because of energy issues. For example, South Africa was one of the global leaders or African leaders in terms of energy. The minister has spoken about it now. But at the moment, because of underinvestment in energy, we think that probably we might need to tell that story quite well, and how probably through the years we have been now say we can not centralize production of energy. Let's decentralize it through Minister Definition 34. And to say that we have funded our civilization through carbon, how can we go sort of alternative energy? There's nothing like clean energy, it's alternative energy. And of course, through that, we might think that because it affects also water. For example, when power goes out, Rand Water, which is our biggest supplier, cannot pump water because of the water energy nexus. And then we package that through that lens so that at least whatever we are going to say, those two narratives, energy and water, do make sense to somebody who reads. Well, that's exactly how the lived experience of the city do make. So that would be an approach we want to take in our next iteration, rather than going a barrage of all the SDGs. Then, of course, from there we'll see where do we hook some of the SDGs to make sense of what we want to see through the energy and water aspect of them. Okay, next slide. So this is exactly, next slide. Yeah, this is exactly what we thought we would do. But we can also look at climate emergency and how South Africa, for example, we're the first city in the world, or in Africa, to link our climate action plan to the climate risk and vulnerability assessment, where we say, here is the plan for action and how we implement it. And based on that plan, we've now linked those zones that are most at risk, for example, flooding or whatever, so that we then can actually be able to do that. So much of the work that was done to inform this, the risk and environmental assessment, now makes sense how to implement climate. And of course, we can think, even if you are in Chaco or in Mtare, or in Tacoma in the US, or I don't know, somewhere in Tete province in Mozambique, it affects you. So we thought, because of the grand sort of the 20th century, we might also need to package it through that. We might choose to do digital transformation or water security or as a strategy that we might think, so that at least there's a way, at least we will view it, rather than going throughout the whole thing. So the whole report is on the UNDESA website. You can actually read the 100-pager. I don't want you to put statistics and whatever, but this is just an awareness of how we've done it in Swane. I thank you.
Thank you so much. I have an announcement. Due to time pressing, the program has changed. Can we please go for lunch, and then we'll rearrange the program, but I think I'll give it to Carol to explain, and then we will proceed from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of the participants, and apologies for this change, but we're running out of time to be able to have our lunch. So we're going to go do that now for 45 minutes, and then we're going to return, and we are going to, we will sort out the order at lunch, but we are going to hear all presentations. So we will just have to postpone the pleasure a little bit until after lunch. But thank you very much, and a round of applause to South Africa, please. Oh, and lunch, if you go to the reception area, you will see the restaurant is just down some stairs from the reception.